From the time an American child reaches the 6th grade, they are taught that the key to success in life is to do well in high school so that they can get accepted to the best possible college. The better grades they get in high school, the better college they will have an opportunity to get into. They are taught that if they get into a great college and get their college degree, any type of job they desire in the field of their choice will be there waiting for them. After getting their dream job, they will be able to buy any car and house they desire, start their own family, and live the American dream. Most Americans today have an expectation of future economic success simply by obtaining a college degree. The entire purpose of elementary school is to prepare students for high school, and the entire purpose of high school is to prepare students for college. In fact, the U.S. now has hundreds of private college preparatory high schools that, at a cost of $25,000 per year, are supposed to increase students' chances of getting into a top-tier college. Students are taught to believe that if they don't go to college, they will be on a path to nowhere and will have no chance of ever building a successful career. Government regulations like No Child Left Behind have left grade and high schools in shambles. Instead of teachers having the freedom to think outside the box and use creative techniques to prepare their students for the real world, they are forced to be narrow-minded and teach with worthless information that will never help their students have successful careers. Today, there are no high schools left in America that teach students the knowledge necessary to start their own business, invent their own product, or even how to use the internet and other free resources to become educated about things without attending college. The annual cost to attend the average private four-year college in America today is $27,293, up 29% from 5 years ago, during the 2005-2006 school year, when the annual tuition cost $21,235. This does not include the cost of textbooks, which have tripled over the past decade. Colleges are now charging $200 for each single textbook that has no resale value because they put out new, slightly revised versions with a new name each year. The textbook publishers are even colluding with college bookstores to make custom textbooks so that students can't save money by buying them online. Colleges are getting kickbacks from publishers in order to destroy the used textbook market, which by itself is proof enough that college administrators are only interested in lining their own pockets and have no interest in helping their students.
As the Occupy Wall Street demonstrations continued for a fifth week, many of the protesters are calling on creditors to forgive student loan debt. It may not be a realistic goal, but the problem is real. The amount of student loans taken out exceeded $100 billion for the first time last year, and total unpaid student loan debt is expected to exceed $1 trillion by the end of 2011. Americans now owe more on student loans than on credit cards, and the default rate is rising.
The U.S. government created Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac in order to make housing more affordable, but instead, their actions drove housing prices through the roof and made buying a house impossible for most Americans unless they took out no-money-down teaser loans with interest rates that substantially increased after a year or two. The U.S. government has been trying for decades to make college more affordable, but its actions have accomplished the complete opposite effect. College is now impossible for most students to afford without getting deeply into debt to do so. All across the country, Americans are graduating college with mortgages before they even buy a house.
So could taxpayers soon be on the hook? We're back with James Freeman, also joining us, OpinionJournal.com editor James Taranto. So these are huge numbers, James. Over $1 trillion in total debt. How big a problem is this?
Well, it's a big problem. And another interesting number is the amount of outstanding student loan debt has doubled in the past 5 years during this dismal economy. Now, when you think about it, that sort of makes sense, because what do young people do when they can't get jobs? Well, they park themselves in school. They try to get another credential in hopes of improving their employment prospects later. But as a result of this, they end up going into the workplace with much more debt. Hopefully, the economy will improve, so they'll be able to get jobs. But this looks to me like another debt bubble, very much like the housing bubble.
In real terms, borrowing has gone up at roughly double in the last 5 years or so.
Yeah, it's the reason people think of it as the new subprime. One of the reasons is that this is when it's coming from the government, a student loan is that rare loan that doesn't matter what your credit score is, your credit history, really your ability to repay. And I think people
You mean that you can get a student loan no matter what your economic circumstances are?
How are Americans supposed to spend $27,293 per year for college when they have no savings or income to pay for it? The U.S. government, with the backing of the Federal Reserve, in the same way they created the real estate bubble by providing mortgages to all Americans through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, regardless of whether or not they had any capacity to pay the loans back, has been using the exact same easy lending practices to create one of the largest bubbles in U.S. history, the college bubble. College students borrowed $106 billion in total student loans for the 2009-2010 school year, up from $96 billion in 2008-2009, $94 billion in 2007-2008, $87 billion in 2006-2007, and $83 billion in 2005-2006. Total student loan debt in the U.S. currently stands at $830 billion and now exceeds credit card debt.
Now, the answer, if someone was defending the program and they're being honest, they might say, well, don't worry about it, because this is a debt that these kids can't escape even through bankruptcy.
Is that right?
So we'll hound them forever. It's half right.
Today, 2/3 of students are graduating college with an average student loan debt of $24,000. And the government is now making the situation many times worse by completely taking over the student loan business. Hidden inside of the recently passed health care bill, the government passed a complete student loan overhaul where they removed commercial banks from providing loans to students. Now, all students will receive their loans directly from the government.
You talk about inflation. You know what it used to cost me a whole year to go to school? $2,000. And that included room and board. You want to talk about inflation? You're never going to be able to get out from that debt. You're an indentured servant. That's right. That $120,000 you owe, $80,000, $40,000, $250,000 if you're a good student that went to law school and you're that much in debt without a job. You have to pay it back. There is no way out. That's the system.
That doesn't mean the taxpayers don't lose, because they've now come out with a lot of income-dependent payment options, income contingent. So if these kids aren't making any money, if they're just downtown Wall Street, they don't have to pay back the loans.
But that makes it very difficult if you're just out of school for the first 10 years of your life, in which you're not making a lot of money anyway. What you want to do is you want to be building assets so you can do things like, you know, prepare for the first child or prepare to buy that house.
Right, but a college degree is sold as an investment, just the way houses are. You're investing in your future. I don't blame these kids for being upset about this, but I think their anger is misdirected. Look, if you buy a car and it turns out to be a lemon, you don't blame the bank that lent you the money to buy the car.
But at some points, I paid as much as 34% of my wage, 32% of my wage. Right now, I'm paying 25% of my wage to school loans. And that's a huge amount when you have other debts and other bills as well.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you very, very much for what you're doing. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Really appreciate the help.
Well, a couple of years ago, the federal government intervened and made sure that from now on, the Department of Education generates all student loans. It used to be a lot done by banks. No longer. What impact has that had on taxpayers?
Well, it means we own all the risk, and it's about $1 trillion coming onto the federal balance sheet. Now, again, we talked about how these, at times, are tough loans for students to escape, but
if they were on the hook for guarantees, even before this, does it matter if it's now on the balance sheet?
It matters somewhat, because what they used to do is guarantee almost all of it, and now the taxpayer is 100% on the hook.
We're all in, baby.
Many students are outright abusing the system. Although government student loans get sent directly to the college or university to pay for a student's tuition, private student loans that are guaranteed by the government usually get sent directly to the student in the form of a check. NIA has been hearing countless reports of students using this free student loan money to buy food, electronics, clothing, jewelry, even cars. The friend of one NIA member used his student loan money to rent and furnish a fancy apartment in Manhattan and didn't even go to college. Even when the loan comes directly from the government and goes straight to the college, there is often thousands of dollars left over each semester after tuition is paid for. This extra money then gets dispersed directly to the student in the form of a check.
We are all in on this, and there is an education bubble because I think college has been sold, and higher education generally, as always a good thing, no matter the cost, sort of like people thought during the housing bubble. And you have to realize, as Glenn Reynolds told us on our Opinion Journal web show this week, there's a difference in value in the marketplace whether you have an engineering degree or gender studies degree. And if you've gone that latter route, and this may be some of the Occupy Wall Street people, you come out of school, you've got a lot of debt and not an immediately marketable skill, you're in trouble.
Well, all of this is sold to us in the name of making college more affordable.
Back in the 1970s, the average college student was able to afford their college tuition without any student loans or help from their parents. They were able to pay for college by working a part-time job year-round or by simply working full-time during the summer when they were off from school. Not only that, but they were also able to afford their own car payments and possibly a small apartment. The U.S. government destroyed this.
Because what happens is when the government subsidizes a good in order to encourage more widespread consumption of it, it creates an artificial demand. Simple economics, that drives prices up.
So the schools have been raising tuition right along with the increases in subsidies for education.
And therefore, it will be U.S. taxpayers who end up paying for the artificially inflated, sky-high tuitions for all college students who can't or choose not to repay their loans. It won't only be taxpayers who suffer. All holders of U.S. dollars worldwide will ultimately pay for everybody's student loan.
And it's a money machine for these colleges and universities.
What's the solution here, James, briefly?
Well, you got to get the government out, and it's not just the loans. The Obama administration...
The government out of the loan, you mean not guaranteeing any loans, not making any loans?
You want to get them out of that business and also out of the subsidy business because President Obama takes great pride in the fact that he has doubled the funding for Pell Grants, just free money, not loans that kids have to pay back. But the same thing applies. Tuition has risen faster than even health care over the last several decades, and that is because the government is creating this artificial demand.
And I think you're right, but I have to say the chances of that happening, the government getting out of college loans, are about as likely as the government getting out of the housing.
How worthless is education? Let me count the ways in my worthless college degree. Worthless. That's what a college degree is worth. Here's my worthless law degree. Equally as worthless. Here's my worthless license to practice law. Worthless. And here's my worthless computer science degree. Also worthless. That's the value of education.
If somebody were graduating from high school today and wanted to know whether they should go to college, I would say they should run, not walk, away from college. Because the industrial age doesn't have long to go. There's no way that I would encourage somebody to go 4 years or more to undergraduate school, rack up a bunch of debt, and learn a bunch of nonsense that isn't going to do them any good when there's no fuel at the filling station, no food at the grocery store, and no water coming out of the municipal taps. Well, why would you go to college to go into a huge amount of debt to get nothing in return, not even something that might facilitate your survival, much less your ability to thrive? So at this point, at this late era in the industrial economy, I wouldn't encourage anybody to go to college. It hasn't been a very good deal for quite a while, and it certainly is a really bad deal now.